Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast, brought to you by Nickel Investigations, the podcast that delves deep into the unsolved mysteries that haunt our province. I'm Jay Nickel, a private investigator with Nickel Investigations, and your host and guide in this journey through the chilling tales that left investigators baffled and communities in search of answers. In each episode, we'll unearth the forgotten stories of Ontario's cold cases, exploring the details, the evidence, and the individuals involved with the eye of a private investigator who specializes in cold case investigations. From the mysterious disappearances to the perplexing murders, our mission is to shine a light in these cases and hopefully bring justice to those who have long awaited closure. But we can't do it alone. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of these enigmatic cases. We'll speak with experts, law enforcement officials, and sometimes even the families of the victims, all in the pursuit of truth. So buckle up and prepare to dive headfirst into the world of unresolved mysteries. Together we'll keep the flame of hope burning for justice, one episode at a time. Thank you for tuning in to the Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast. Let's begin our quest for answers. Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast, Season 1, Episode 11. This is about Benita Tarantino, Susan Siegel, Donna Oglive, Lori Pinkus, and Lyle Ford. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. Over the years in Toronto, there are many unsolved murders of sex trade workers. These are the stories of 5, so they shall not be forgotten. All being moved from where they were last seen and strangled. These dates from the mid-1980s to the late 1990s. Could they all be connected to one man? 17-year-old Bonnie Tarantino, a prostitute since the age of 13, left her Ulster Street home to visit friends on Friday, September 27, 1985, one day after getting engaged to her boyfriend, and never returned. The unclothed body of 20-year-old prostitute Susan Siegel was discovered at 7:30 in the morning of Monday, December 17, 1984, alongside railway tracks near the Ontario Public Stockyards, an industrial area of West Toronto. Donna Oglive was a resident of British Columbia. She's been in Toronto for the past 5 weeks. Donna had been known to travel between Vancouver and Toronto. She'd been working as a prostitute in George Street East and Church Street area of Toronto. She was found murdered on Sunday, March 8, 1998. She too had been strangled. The body of Lori Pinkus was found outside Brockton High School at 90 Croatia Street in downtown Toronto on Sunday, September 8, 1991. A young woman, a high school dropout who worked as a prostitute and was addicted to drugs, had been strangled and left partially clad behind the school. On Sunday, September 9, 1990, a couple walking their dog found the body of Lyle Ford around 7:30 a.m. in the Crombie Park area at Esplanade and Sherbourne Street. Her clothes were disheveled and the pants she was wearing were pulled down. She too had been strangled. Yet listen to the silence. I've written too many of these. Yet another prostitute has been slain this year. Another candlelight vigil will be held, often in Allen Gardens in the area where so many prostitutes work. More tears shed, more fear expressed, more anger that a killer or killers stalks him with impunity. Yet listen to the silence. Benita Tarantino. 17-year-old Bonnie Tarantino, a prostitute since the age of 13, left her Ulster Street home in Toronto to visit friends on September 27, 1985, one day after getting engaged to her boyfriend, and never returned. She'd been working as a prostitute in the Pembroke Avenue and Gerrard Street area. She was reportedly last seen alive during the late evening and early morning hours of September 27th and 28th, 1985, and is believed to have gotten into a vehicle and driven away from the area. Benita left the house she lived in saying she was going to visit friends and never returned. Mushroom pickers found her body on Monday, October 26 in a wooded area on the north side of Teston Road between Pine Valley Road and Weston Road in Vaughan, just northwest of Toronto. Her body, clad only in a single sock, was found propped up against a tree. Her clothes were missing. An autopsy failed to unearth the cause of death. She was identified through dental records and the help of a social worker who inquired about her. Tarantino's murder is one of a rash of prostitutes laying in Toronto in the mid-80s to late 90s period. Benita was a troubled teenager from a single-parent family and had started running away from home when she was 13. Soon fell into prostitution and drug addiction in Toronto's downtown streets. At the time of her death, Benita had an 8-month-old baby girl. Police sources did say she was a witness in a Toronto organized crime case at the time of her murder. Susan Siegel. The unclothed body of 20-year-old prostitute Susan Siegel was discovered at 7:30 in the morning, December 17, 1984, alongside railway tracks near the Ontario Public Stockyards in the industrial area of West Toronto. She had been strangled. Since the victim's clothes were absent from the scene, police concluded she had been killed elsewhere and dumped at the desolate Ethel Avenue site. Siegel was last seen alive the evening of December 16, 1984, leaving a hotel in the Queen and Dufferin Streets area, but was known to frequent the Jarvis and Gerrard Streets area, a favorite hangout for prostitutes. Investigators believe she was last seen entering a vehicle in the area of Isabella Street and Sherbourne Street December 16, 1984 at about 8 p.m. Police learned that a small truck and a young man in his late 20s or early 30s might be involved in the murder, but even with the help of a $50,000 reward, they were unable to come up with the name of the suspect. Donna Oglive. Donna Oglive was a resident of British Columbia. She had been in the Toronto area for the past 5 weeks. Donna had been known to have traveled between Vancouver and Toronto. She had been working as a prostitute in the Gerrard Street East and Church Street area of Toronto. Sunday, March 8, 1998, approximately 7:12 a.m., a resident of Carlton Street called police to advise of unknown trouble at the rear parking lot of 130 Carlton Street. Police from 51 Division arrived on scene and discovered the body of Donna Oglive, 24 years old. She was partially unclothed, but no garment was missing, Toronto Homicide Unit Detective Sergeant Bob Clark said, but he wouldn't comment further. He said there was no sign of a struggle. Injuries to her body were nothing significant and no evidence of fresh sexual activity was found. Forensic tests were conducted to determine if Oglive was sexually abused before her death. Donna had been posed with her skirt over her head and her underwear at her ankles. On Monday, March 9, 1998, post-mortem examination was performed on the body of Donna Oglive and determined the cause of death to be manual strangulation. It was also determined that Donna Oglive was carrying a male fetus approximately 4 months into her pregnancy. She was also the mother of a 2-year-old son. She was a veteran, said a man who called the Toronto Sun to say he was a friend of Oglive. She's one of the most street-smart girls out there. She wouldn't just go to a parking lot with anybody, he said. Another friend saw her about 5 a.m., just before he was called out in a job for emergency glass repair. Oglive had been planning to fly home to Vancouver to be with her son, Mason, and the boy's father, Leon, the day after she was found dead. Lori Pinkus. The body of Lori Pinkus was found outside Brockton High School at 90 Croatia Street in downtown Toronto on September 8, 1991. The young woman, a high school dropout who worked as a prostitute and was addicted to drugs, had been strangled and left partially clad behind the school. Police had been looking for her on a warrant of failing to appear to testify against a man who had stabbed her in the chest in Ottawa earlier. The afternoon before she was killed, she asked her mom, "If I die, will you take care of it? Will you bury me?" Lori grew up in Ottawa, the youngest of 9 children. She dropped out of school in grade 10. She moved to Toronto 5 months before her murder to get away from her troubled past. In 1990, she was stabbed in the chest in her Ottawa apartment. 2 men were charged with the assault, but charges were dropped on 1 man when Lori twice failed to appear for court dates. She left Ottawa just after a warrant was issued for her arrest in March 1991 for failing to appear in court. Prior to the discovery of her body, police said she was last seen leaving a local bar after having a drink with friends. A person who saw the body described Pinkus as only wearing a halter top, her arms at her side, and her blue eyes wide open. Full forensic exams of the scene and body were conducted, but Detective Sergeant Stacey Glantz said DNA testing was not available in 1991. Recently, DNA testing was conducted in this case. As a result, a strong male DNA profile was developed. He is currently not in the National DNA Databank. Now that we have the killer's DNA, we just need a name to go with it, Glantz said in a video appeal. Lyle Ford. September 9, 1990, a couple walking their dog found the body of Lyle Ford around 7:30 a.m. in Crombie Park, at the Esplanade and Sherbourne Street areas. Her clothes were disheveled and the pants she was wearing were pulled down. An autopsy revealed that Ford, originally from the U.S., had been strangled to death. She had suffered bite marks in the attack and had been sexually assaulted. She was separated and had developed an alcohol addiction, Detective Sergeant Steve Smith of the Cold Case Unit told The Sun. She had an apartment, but more often than not lived in women's shelters. And she embarked on the perilous journey as a sex worker. Smith added DNA was developed, but at the time it was insufficient. In fact, there were multiple DNAs from the bite marks and from the semen. Suspects. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. Gregory George Ashford, 22. In the case of Ashford, he can only be considered a suspect in the murders of Benita Tarantino in 1985 and Susan Siegel in 1984. Ashford was charged with first-degree murder in the death of 38-year-old University of Toronto dental nursing supervisor. The body of Faith Consom Russell was discovered in the Etobicoke apartment on December 4, 1985. Faith had met Ashford at a Grey Cup party in Toronto in 1985. After a week of dating, Ashford strangled Russell in his apartment after she tried to put an end to the romance. Ashford would diarize exactly when it happened. After strangling Russell in his apartment following an argument, he wrote in Russell's daytimer, "Could not fulfill plans. I was murdered on November 30th, 1985 at 6:20 a.m. In 2020 hindsight, I finally messed with the wrong man." Police at the time believed the 22-year-old Ashford may have left Toronto. They believe he may have fled to Montreal. Although Ashford had spent most of his life in Toronto, he was born in Noranda, Quebec, and had contacts in the area. As Ashford tried to escape across Canada, he kept a chilling diary along the way. "Killing Faith didn't seem so wrong," he wrote. "It didn't hurt as much as I thought." In another entry, "I wonder how long it will be until I get caught," he mused. "I'm feeling the urge to kill again." So he did. 3 days after fleeing Toronto, Ashford took Brenda Lee Garside, a pregnant 17-year-old sex worker, back to his Halifax hotel room, where he struck her on the head with a telephone receiver and smothered her with a pillow. Investigators discovered that a credit card receipt signed F. Russell had been used to pay for the room. The address on the receipt led them to the Etobicoke apartment on Lakeshore Boulevard West, where Russell's body was found wrapped in a sleeping bag. Halifax force were also trying to determine whether there was a link to another murder at the time, that of Tina Marie Barron, another prostitute whose body was found on November 4th, 1985, in a wooded area at Shubenacadie, about 60 kilometers from Halifax. She too had been strangled. Ashford was eventually arrested by police in Winnipeg. Police suspected Ashford added more victims as he crisscrossed the country before arriving in Winnipeg and turning himself in. Charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, he pleaded guilty to life with no chance of parole for 20 years. He was convicted of the murders of Faith Consom Russell and Brenda Lee Garside, but was granted full parole in March 2023. To this day, Montreal police still suspect Ashford may be responsible for 2 of their cold cases, which he's denied. One of which is the strangling death of prostitute Francine Saint-Hilaire, 35, who was found on February 2nd, 1985, a day after a man booked into the Bolero Tourist Hotel in downtown Montreal. He's also suspected in the murder of Elizabeth Gail Tucker, 17, who vanished on May 1st, 1985, while hitchhiking from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and was later found dead. Daniel Harvey Atkinson, 41, of Parry Sound. Police are looking into the possibility that a 41-year-old man by the name of Daniel Harvey Atkinson of Parry Sound, arrested on May 6, 1998, could be connected to a number of unsolved sex trade worker homicides in Toronto. I suspect it could be as many as 5 homicides dating back to 1984. Some say 6. At the time the arrest, police were handing out notices to prostitutes and potential customers in downtown Toronto, asking them to contact an officer if they feel they have information they may assist police in their investigation. Atkinson was charged with sexual assault and forcible confinement after a 24-year-old prostitute was picked up near Sherbourne and Gerrard Streets around 3:30 a.m. yesterday and driven to a secluded parking lot in Eastern Avenue. There she was assaulted in the vehicle, but security guards saw what was happening and called police. Atkinson owned a landscape company. Reports indicate he worked at Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Toronto. Police described his vehicle as a green 1997 Chevrolet pickup truck with an automatic transmission and tan and brown interior. License number was 882 OCS. 2 sex trade workers groups claim the plate is on their bad dates list. He was apparently known to police. Atkinson was later charged with sexual assault, forcible confinement, and assault causing bodily harm in connection with another attack on a prostitute in August 1997. My theory. Ashford was definitely a possibility in the earlier murders of Benita Tarantino and Susan Siegel, but he was in jail before any of the other murders. But it's hard to believe he didn't kill anyone else other than the murders in Toronto and Halifax. Daniel Harvey Atkinson to me seems to be a serial killer who got away with murders. I don't believe for a second he didn't murder anyone. All these 5 murders happened over a weekend. According to a retired Federal Bureau of Investigation serial killer expert John Douglas, time of week is significant when tracking serial killers. Most strike on the weekends, starting on Friday night, and have sometimes been known to kill on a holiday Monday. Douglas said case studies of captured serial killers have found they are often normal during the week, but get up the nerve to kill after a few drinks on the weekend. Many killers before their crimes can be found in bars. Benita Tarantino, 1985, transported far away from where she was last seen, found near her highway. Clothes were absent, murdered on a Friday. Susan Siegel, 1984, transported 10 kilometers away from where she was last seen, found near a railway yard, just as Atkinson was caught. Clothes were absent, murdered on a Sunday night. Donna Oglive, 1998, not transported far. Body was posed, skirt overhead, underwear at ankles, murdered on a Saturday night. Lori Pinkus, transported unknown distances, missing pants. She was murdered on a Saturday night. Lyle Ford, 1990, transported unknown distance, disheveled clothes, pants pulled down, murdered on Saturday night. Reports on Daniel Harvey Atkinson had him working in Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Toronto, about 10 minutes north of the Island Gardens area where all the victims were last seen alive. The earlier murders of Benita Tarantino and Susan Siegel had their bodies being moved away from the areas where they were last seen alive. They were likely killed elsewhere and then transported. Both were missing their clothes. Someone was a landscaper of the pickup truck could easily hide a body in the box under a tarp. Susan Siegel was found in the rail yard, just like the location where Atkinson was eventually caught, apparently trying to murder another sex trade worker. The murders of Donna Oglive, Lori Pinkus, and Lyle Ford all seem to have occurred near the location they were found. Clothes may be missing, but largely the clothes were still there, though found with pants and underwear pulled down. All were strangled. Did the killer switch from moving bodies away from where they were last seen and keeping clothes as a souvenir? Or is there a separate killer of the murders from the 90s who seemed to kill at the location he sexually assaulted the victims and didn't take souvenirs? One thing does seem very likely. There was at least one serial killer of sex trade workers in Toronto operating through the 1980s and 1990s. Thank you for listening to Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast, and please consider donating to our GoFundMe campaign to help with further investigations, and please subscribe on Patreon, Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts.